Okay, so for those who've attended the reading sessions before, I guess you know me by now. But in case this is your first session, my name is Kutemwa, and I am a second year chemistry major at Xavier University of Louisiana. And today I'll be looking at the reading section. And so also if you have attended the session before, you know that I really enjoy interactions. So I hope you guys can take part, answer questions, and so that you get the most out of this session. And I'll be monitoring the chat the whole time. So in case you have a question or you don't get me clearly, please let me know. I've been having Wi-Fi issues. So at some point, if I start breaking, you can't hear me, or if you want me to repeat something, just let me know and I'll be able to go back and repeat. Yeah. To the person writing on the screen, I can see who you are. If you don't want to be here, you can leave, but please don't disturb everyone else who wants to get a lot out of the session. Okay, so I always like repeating this just for the sake of emphasis, but in case you are not so familiar with the new format of the SAT, there have been a lot of changes. And so most of the information that you find online might be linked to the old SAT, so just watch out and make sure that you're not trying to like get skills that you won't even need on the new SAT because a lot has changed. And this is especially true for the reading section. So if you're familiar with the old format, we would have very long passages. And from that, you would have to answer like 10 questions per passage. So it was really a lot of reading, and we would focus a lot on like reading strategies, being able to get as much as you can out of, a passage. But as you can see from this example, this is the length of reading passages now. So it's very short, and you don't really have to worry about like deciphering information because it's just you already have the information that you need, and there's not much, I guess I'll call it excess information. Like basically you have what you need to answer the question. And so I haven't obviously taken this new SAT, it's very new, but generally for the reading section, the biggest advice that I would give to you is always read the question first. So this is a combination of reading and writing, as you can see from the title. So they won't really outright tell you like, okay, this is a reading question, okay, this is a writing question. It will be up to you to be able to find the difference between reading and writing. And you can simply do that by seeing how the question is phrased. If you get familiar with the types of questions, it's very easy for you to know what question is what question. Like so far in the reading section, we've looked at function questions and main idea questions. And so they'll outright tell you, like, which example? Question 7 says, which choice states the main purpose? This is obviously function. Purpose is another word for function. And question 8 asks you what the function, that's outright asking you for the function. So it's a reading question. And so just you knowing, first of all, what section that the question is from and what type of question it is should really help you, because the approach that you should take for the reading section is don't take every question the same way. It's important for you to understand what the College Board wants in an answer for you to be able to find the answer. So if you see function, as we talked about last time, I'll go over it before we move on to the next thing. But when we were looking at function, we looked at how you can't find the function without knowing the main idea. Those two are linked together, and you can't have one without the other. And we did a whole bunch of examples on finding the function. So you really have to have that in mind whenever you find the function question. You can't just like reach the question and answer it. You have to be more deliberate about knowing the type of question and what you should do. And it might seem like a lot, like it might sound like a lot, but the more that you practice, it just becomes second nature. You won't really have to think about, oh, function. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. Like the more you practice, you just be able to go through it without even thinking about the approach that you're going to take. And we found through going through this paper, this is the first College Board paper of the new SAT. And in case you're not in the WhatsApp group, please send me a direct message with your number. I can add you because that's where the materials are. We have a lot of textbooks and all the practice tests and their solutions. So it would be great if you have access to that. And I'm sticking to SAT practice test 1 because I don't want to finish the material that you can use to practice. So we'll be using this one for, well, all the reading sessions that we're going to have. So for the reading section, the majority of questions will be purpose and function, which we have both looked at. And then if you continue reading through, so I'm using this as sort of an outline because they haven't really popularized what type of questions are still on the SAT. So we're using this as a guide to see, because obviously if a type of question appears on this paper, then it's still game. Some questions won't be there at all. So you really should be careful when you're studying, like don't focus on things that you don't need anymore. So for today, we'll be looking at this type of question, question 13. If you look at the question part of it, it says, if which finding, if true, would most directly support the student's claim? So we're going to be focusing on supporting evidence questions today. And before we do that, like I said, we'll go back a little bit. Most of the names here look very familiar. So let me just ask, is there anyone who's like, this is your first reading session? Anyone who's here for the first time in reading? Just so that I know how detailed I should make the review. And you can type in the chat or like unmute yourself. Okay, so I'm guessing everyone who's here has been to a reading session before, so I won't be very detailed. This is just like a reminder so that we're taking everything into account as we continue. So as always, if you have any question, please feel free to interrupt me. I love it when you guys are active. And also, if you have any additions that you want to, make to the part that we're on, please feel free as well. If at some point I start breaking, like I said, I have issues with Wi-Fi sometimes, so please let me know so that I can like repeat what I said in case you miss it. Okay, so far we've looked at big idea questions, and we have also looked at function questions, which are right here. And we followed this specific order because these two questions are linked to each other. So whenever I ask for the main idea, think of it as, the way the word says main idea. You're picking the idea that's most prevalent. And if we were looking at the old SAT, that would be much more of a hassle because then you have like 96 lines to read through for you to find the main idea. But for you guys, you have such a short paragraph, so you don't really have a lot of information to decipher. The biggest thing is for you to understand what the main idea is, right? It's the main idea, not the main topic. And it's important for you to make that difference. Last time we said the topic is the most frequently used word in the passage. So if I'm talking about a certain girl, everything that I say will be about that girl. So she is the topic. But then what am I saying about that girl? Am I talking about how she loves to drink coffee? Everything in the passage is about how, like, the effect that coffee has on her. So that's going to be the main point. So the most important thing is the topic will help you to see what's being talked about a lot, because you can't have a main idea from one sentence. It's not going to be the main idea. And then when you add the so what, it makes you go beyond and really analyze what idea is being given to you in the passage. And we looked at a bunch of examples. So I hope you've done some practice and you're able to find what the main idea is. And we also looked at where you would find the main idea. So there are times when you read the passage and you've read through it, but you still don't know what the main idea is. There are some things that can help you to find it. So we said, think of it as a composition, right? If I tell you, if I say, write me a story about how you heard about the SAT, you're not just going to start you won't just start out of nowhere, like, so last week, you're going to first start, oh, my name is this, and I've always wanted to study in the US, and so this happened, and then, you have to tell me the sequence of events that happened. And so that's the way it's going to be for every passage that you have. Before anything is said, the main character has to be introduced, first of all. So that's going to be the topic. It might not be a person as a character. It might be, a topic like a scientific question or something. And then after that, the author will have to explain what is being said about it. And because your passage is so short, this will have to be either in the first sentence or in the second sentence. So just at the beginning, you should be able to already find what the main idea is. And then you sort of cement it by continuing to read through, because then you see like, oh, okay, this is still being talked about even when I continue reading the passage. So that's the main idea. It's the topic plus what is being said about it. And it's what you would get if you were to summarize a passage in one sentence. Okay. Then we looked at function, the last reading session we had, and we said function questions will ask you either for the function or for the purpose, basically the same thing. Some of them would ask you for the effect, but they're basically asking you, why is this in the passage? And in this one, we said, think of a passage as a debate, right? The author has this point and they're trying to convince you of that point. And so everything that they say in the passage is meant to convince you about that point. So there's no way that you can tell me the function of something without knowing the context of something, right? If I tell you, oh, I'm in the library right now, you're not going to know what I'm doing. Some people would say, oh, maybe I'm studying, oh, maybe I'm working, maybe I'm, there are so many possibilities that could be there. But for you to be able to come up with the answer, you have to know why I'm here, You can't give function without knowing the context of what's going on. And so the context is going to be, or is, the main idea, right? That's like the motion of the debate. And it's not possible, like I said, for you to know what function is outside the main idea. And we looked at a whole lot of questions, of examples, and they showed us that one of the traps that the College Board uses is sometimes they'll ask you for the function of something, and then one of the options will just state what it is. And an example I like using is, imagine I'm telling you about a passage about this, maybe it's studying the phenomenon of shoppers and how they go to stores and they can't really decide what to buy. So that's the context. And then I put statistics there that show, oh, shoppers spend an average of 30 minutes in the store, even when they're just buying one thing, right? So I've given you that statistic. And I ask you, what is the purpose of that statistic? The answer won't be, oh, to show that shoppers spend a long time in the store. That's not the function, that's what it is. So you would have to connect it to the main idea and say, oh, this statistic proves that truly shoppers spend a long time in the store. So you're connecting it to the main idea. And so that should help you to figure out what function is. And we looked at a bunch of examples as well, but I can't stress how much practice will be beneficial to you, because there are times when you don't really understand. You think you do, but you don't really understand. And going through questions will help you to review, what you need to do for you to polish up your mistakes. And that's another thing that I emphasize a lot. Whenever you do a practice test, don't just do a practice test and forget about it, Analyze it and really question yourself, like, why did I get this wrong? What made me get it wrong? How can I improve? Okay, so from that, are there any questions from the previous topics before we move on?
No, ma'am.
All right, great. So we're going to move to the next part, and we'll be looking at command of evidence questions. So if you have seen the previous SAT, for this one, they would ask you to pick the lines in a passage that prove a certain point. So they would ask you which portion of the passage proves that, let me give an example, which portion of the passage proves that shoppers do spend a long time in stores. And then you would have to scan through the passage and find, oh, is it line 23 to 24? Is it 42, But for this one, the passage is so short that that wouldn't make sense. And so they'll ask you to either come up with a point. I think let's look at the example just so that we have an idea of, how the questions actually look. Question 13. It says, born in 1891, Quechua speaking, born in 1891 to a Quechua speaking family in the Andes Mountains of Peru, Martin Chambi is today considered to be one of the most renowned figures of Latin American photography. In a paper for art history class, a student claims that Chambi's photographs have considerable ethnographic value. In his work, Chambi was able to capture diverse elements of Peruvian society, representing his subjects with both dignity and authenticity. And then being asked which finding, if true, would most directly support the student's claim. Okay, so this is somehow outside what you've been given. Yes, you're supposed to go through the options and find out which one provides evidence, to the figure. And we're going to come back to this question. Hopefully, by the time we go through the main points when it comes to supporting evidence, it will be much easier for you to find the answer to that question. Okay. So this is mostly an approach that's centered towards the old SAT. And right now, as tutors, we're working on coming up with somehow new material because, like I said, we don't really have much information on the new SAT. And we're also trying to filter out what shouldn't be included, what we shouldn't focus on. So this is definitely a work in progress, but we're still going to focus on the points that are still relevant when it comes to command of evidence questions. Okay. So like I said, this is really focused towards the old SAT. So the idea is to use a whiteboard, but that gives me some issues. So I'll keep this and still like write over it. And again, if at some point you stop hearing me or you just want me to repeat something, just let me know. Okay, so looking at command of evidence, key part is the evidence. And mostly, I think how these questions are phrased can sometimes not confuse, but it's meant to mislead you in a way. They would ask you like, which one provides the best evidence? And I think I'll also be utilizing the chat a lot to put points in, but yeah. They would ask you for which option gives you the best evidence that would support a certain idea, right? So it kind of seems like, oh, you would have to filter out through the options and then like really judge all of them and see which one really does a good job. You know, you might have two answers that do the same thing, but one of them is going to be better than the other. But keep in mind, and this is generally for the SAT, any section that you're going to have, there's only one answer for every single question that you're going to have, right? This is a test that's a standardized test, and it means it's really relied on to provide a standard. And so it can't be subjective in any way. What I mean is you can't have a question where you have two answers and it's possible for some people to go with A and it's correct, and some people can go with B and it's correct. You're supposed to have one single answer to every single question that you have. And I hope this helps you on any section that you have. So it means that if you ever find yourself debating between two answers, it's either you haven't understood the question or you don't know how to answer the question, right? There's never going to be a situation where you have to choose between two correct answers. And so even if they ask you for the best piece of evidence that either supports something or doesn't support something, there's just one answer that you're looking for. So I hope that helps you, like even generally on the SAT, but you're only going to have one option that really like performs the function that you're being asked, right? Like in the previous question that we looked at, we were being asked which portion supports, you know, the entire passage that we read through. So even if you're asked for the best piece of evidence, there's only one. And also keep in mind that there's only two things that you can be asked to do. You are either supporting a claim or refuting a claim, right? Because I can't just tell you find evidence without knowing what you are finding evidence to. So you're either finding something that proves a certain point or says that point is false. So you're either supporting or refuting. And you also have to pay attention to the question. Like I said, like these questions can vary, you know. So you have to be able to tell what you're doing. Are you supporting? Are you refuting? Are you picking something that would show that something is true or prove that something is false? So the first thing is really read through the question, understand what you're being asked to do, and then go to the option. So the first thing is the action. So there's two things, like I said, you can either support or refute. So you have to be clear, which action are you doing? Are you supporting or are you refuting? And the second thing takes us back to the main idea. And this is something that we'll come back to a lot because most of the questions, if not all of them, are really linked to the main idea. Now, I'm not talking about the main idea of the passage. I'm talking about the main idea in the question. Like you really need to know what you're looking for before you go through. And I feel like this is a basic concept. Like you can't look for something without knowing what you're looking for, you know? So the first thing is understand the question, right? Understand what the question wants you to do. So for example, in the question that we're going to do, that we looked at from the College Board 1 practice test, we are being asked to support all the information from the passage. So you have to keep that in mind. Like, okay, so what was said in the passage? Like, what am I supporting? Am I supporting that this person is an amazing photographer? Am I supporting that their work is amazing? So that also really requires you to know what the main idea is of the passage. But the major thing here is know what you're looking for before you start looking for it. Because you're going to have different options. Of course, you always have A, B, C, and D. But these are sort of different because each option provides you with a completely different piece of evidence or possible evidence. And so if you don't know what you're looking for, it's very easy to get sort of not confused, but lost in the details of the question. So I read this article which gave advice of like writing down what you're looking for. I feel like that would be a waste of time. But my best tip to you would be just like state it in your mind. Like read through the question and say, okay, what am I looking for? Looking for something that says, well, I don't know, John is intelligent. Like just summarize it, summarize the main idea and make it as short as you can, so that as you read through the questions, you have something in mind, like, okay, does this say John is smart? Oh no, it doesn't. Okay, next option. And you really have to know what you're looking for, because like I said, there's so much detail. I'm sure you saw how long the options were. Like A was like 3 sentences long, option B was like 4. It's really a lot of information to filter through. So really have something in mind as you go through the questions. And for this one, by default, I don't know, there might be different methods and approaches to this one, but for this one you have no choice but to use the elimination method. Like there's nothing else you can do. It's not like, oh, option D is usually the answer. There's nothing like that. And like I said, each option provides you with different possibilities. Each option provides you with different possibilities, and so you can't really know that an answer is wrong unless you check and see that it's wrong. Okay, so the Zoom we're using today would time us out in about 10 minutes. So please just sign back in and we'll continue. Sorry about the disturbance. Our usual Zoom isn't available today, so that's why we use the different link, but we'll make it work. Yeah. Okay. So I was saying, for this one, you have no choice but to use the elimination method. Like there's nothing else you can do, because you can't tell an answer is wrong unless you've read through the answer and disqualified it. So you have no choice but to use the elimination method. So that's the third thing you would do. Okay, so the first thing we said is find the action that you're supposed to do, right? Am I supporting? Am I refuting? Once you do that, check the main idea, because you're going to put those together to give you sort of what to go through, right? So imagine on that question that we looked at, the action is we're supporting. Second thing is we know, okay, I'll just give an example, but Paul is a photographer. So we know the action is supporting. We know the main idea is that Paul is a photographer, and that's what we're supporting. And then as we go through the options, we're going to combine those. So we're looking for something that says Paul is a photographer, right? And if we were refuting, that would turn around and say Paul is not a photographer. So that's why I'm saying the first thing that you do is the action. And then the second thing is the main idea of the question. What am I supporting? What am I refuting? And then summarize it in a short phrase, as short as it can be, because like you're just keeping that in your mind as you go through the options. And then elimination method. So you have to go through the options and see what the answer is. I know there's a lot of approaches to that as well. Some people will say like, oh, always start with C, or always start with D, and a lot of other stuff. But I feel like all of them have an equal chance of being right. So I would prefer to go in order, just for the sake of order in my mind as well. I don't know. I know everyone is different. So that will really be up to you. Maybe you have like specific strategies for elimination method. But the basic thing is you have to go through all the options and either disqualify or qualify them. So go through A very fast and see, oh, does this say Brian is a photographer? Oh, no, it doesn't. Cancel it. Go to B. Does this say Brian is a photographer? Oh, no, it's not. Cancel it. Go to C. So keeping something in mind will really help you to eliminate what's wrong fast. It just helps you with the speed. And yes, there are times when you might eliminate only 2 options and remain with 2, but you still have 2 remaining. So you have a shorter list of information to go through and still use that same short sentence to disqualify or qualify. So the basic thing is you have to go through all the options, and you are either qualifying and disqualifying it. And I am emphasizing on the qualify and the disqualify because it's very easy to, I don't know, to start trying to justify some answers. So like I said, keep it in mind that you're only going to have one correct answer. There's only one thing that's going to support the right point. So if you're stuck on 2 options, it's either you are looking for the wrong thing, or I don't know, you just didn't understand the question somehow. But you're only going to have one piece that supports it, because like I said, this exam can't be subjective in any way. It has to be objective so that it's fair and it's able to give something that colleges can use, because that's the whole point. you have an exam that colleges can use to sort of, it sounds very wrong, but like to sort of rate applicants. So everyone has to have an equal chance. And so you're only going to have one option, right? So if you have the right point in mind as you are qualifying or disqualifying, there's no way that you can miss it. By default, you'll be able to find the right answer if you have the right thing in mind. So if you're stuck on two options, you might need, like I said, to filter them through again, but still do the same thing. Keep in mind, okay, what am I doing? Does this information truly prove that this person is this or this person is not this? And that should guide you to the right answer. Yeah. So do we have any questions so far? Additions, subtractions? Okay. So those are the three things that you have to do. Number one, find the action. Number two, find the main idea of the question. So basically find out, and on number two, I'll say 2.1 is make a phrase. And I'm sure by now you know what I mean. But make a phrase that you keep in your mind as you go through the options. So as you find the main idea of the question, like tell yourself, what am I looking for? So I'm looking for something that says this is this or this is not this. And so as you go through on the third step with the elimination method, you are just seeing,
Hello?
does anything satisfy that phrase or not? Did someone say something? Oh, Dean, were you saying something?
Yeah, just putting this together so that as I was hearing.
Sorry?
I wasn't hearing anything much as I was checking.
You weren't hearing me?
No, my screen was purely silent.
Oh, are you seeing it now?
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Did you miss anything?
Not really until we just joined, right?
Yeah.
All right. I haven't
Oh,
missed anything.
all right, great. Okay. All right, so it's just basically going through the three steps again. So go through the action, find out, are you supporting, are you refuting a claim? Second thing is, what's the main idea of the question? What are you looking for to support or not support? And then the third thing is elimination method. So go through the questions and qualify or disqualify. And as you qualify and disqualify, you do not have to justify anything. So I guess this takes us to tips on handling the questions. But I think let me just end it now because it will log us out in like 3 minutes anyway. So I'm going to end the meeting and please just sign back in because we have a 40-minute limit. So yeah. Okay, so the next part is we're looking at tips for the questions. So we've looked at the steps that we should take to handle the questions. So now we'll just look at basically the do's and the don'ts. What can help you when you do come across such a question on the SAT. Okay, so the first thing, so I guess we could go in terms of the steps. So we said the first thing is support or refute. This is very basic and it should apply to everything that you do on the SAT, but read the question first. Read the question first because that's going to help you to know what to focus on as you actually go through. And if you know that, oh, I'm looking for information that's going to support this thing before you actually read, it's very easy. You only have to read through it once because you already have that in mind as you actually go through. So the first thing is read the question. And we looked at what you should look for. We said you should look for the action specifically, and you should also look for the idea that's coming out of the question. So that's the second thing. Always keep, let me just say keep statement in mind because we already talked about how you should make a very short phrase, a very short statement that will help you to filter out the options. So if you keep that in mind, you won't have to spend so much time eliminating. It will just be a touch and go, read through, oh, if this doesn't, okay, it's definitely not the answer. And so keep that statement in mind. And the third thing is don't justify. This is a very big one. And yeah, it just stems from the fact that the College Board is trying to deceive you, you know. They don't want the questions to be very simple because then that wouldn't, you know, achieve the purpose of the SAT. So they're trying to test you. There are going to be some answers that maybe have some elements that would somehow contribute, but it's just wrong. Like I said, you're only going to have one answer. And so there will be no need for you, if an answer is correct, it's correct. There will be no need for you to be like, oh, maybe if I think of it in terms of this, or if I go deeper, you know, this would somehow, you know, there's nothing like that. If an answer is correct, it's going to directly, let me just put it like that. Answers are always direct. There will be no need for you to go philosophical and analyze, you know. And it's very easy to do that because most people are like, oh my goodness, this is SAT, it's hard. It's not, you know. Once you keep in mind what the College Board wants, and once you also remember that there's only going to be one answer, it should make it very easy, you know. There's only going to be one that actually does what you're being asked, you know. Because like I said, there only has to be one answer for each question. Okay, so always make sure you read the question and pay attention to the action and the main idea of the question. And as you go through the options, keep the statement in mind and don't try to justify any answer. If an answer is correct, it's going to be correct, no doubt. No need for any additional arguments, you know. There'll only be one that supports or gives evidence to the point. Okay. So, like I said, this information is would most apply to the odd format of the questions. Yeah, so don't really pay attention to this. Specifically, command of evidence, it has really changed a lot compared to the old SAT. So yeah, there's a lot that wouldn't even help you on the new SAT. But the main thing is the concept is the same. You're picking information that supports or refutes a claim. And so it's important to know what that supporting would look like. There's no way I can tell you like, oh, it's either it gives statistics or, you know, there's so much, I don't know what word I can use. There are different forms that the evidence is going to take. And so that's why it's important for you to keep a statement in mind, because then you're only seeing like, does this show that this is this, or does it not show that this is this? And so that should be the guide. And yeah, I think the examples will shed more light on the formats that the evidence can take. But the main thing is it can be in any form as long as it does support or refute the claim that you're being asked to support or refute. So any questions before we go to some questions?
Yeah. Let's go to the question.
All right. Okay, so first we're going to do one together. Like try to use the process and then we'll go through one while you guys will go through it. Okay, for some reason my screen is frozen. Give me a moment. Okay. Okay, so we're starting with the same question we went through. So if we were going through this on an actual paper, first thing we would do is, let me just get the, okay. First thing we would do is read the question. So it says, which finding, if true, would most directly, and this is what I mean, it asks you which one most directly. So it seems like, oh, there might be two which do the same job, but one of them will be more direct. No, there's nothing like that. There's only going to be one that does the action, only one. So if we were to change this, we'll just say which one directly supports the student's claim. And there's only going to be one that does support the student's claim. So the first thing is we read through the question. We know that the action that we're doing is supporting. And what are we supporting? So the next thing is the main idea of the question. We're supporting the student's claim. What is the student's claim? What's said in the passage? And so this would need us to know the main idea of the passage. So now we're going to read through the passage and see what the student is claiming. You know, what is the main idea of this passage? So we know that the topic, we read through this. So we know we're talking about Martin Chambi. So he's the topic. So what is being said about him? Okay, so he was born, this is just introducing the topic. Like we said, before you start anything, you're going to tell us who we are talking about. So this is just telling us where he was born. Okay, continue. And then the claim is he is considered to be one of the most renowned figures of Latin American photography. So in short, he's a great photographer. That's the claim. And we've seen that this is just in the beginning, right? The main idea is towards the beginning. Okay, so that's the claim. Everything else that comes in, we already read through this. He's talking about how his achievements were amazing. Like in a paper, he did this. His photographs have value in his work. He was able to capture diverse elements. Okay, he represents his subjects amazingly. So basically, Chambi is amazing. He's an amazing photographer. And that's what we're going to keep in mind as we go through, right? That's the claim that we're supporting. We're looking for information that says Chambi is great at photographing. Let me just say, Chambi is great photographer. So that's a short phrase that to keep in mind as we go through the options. So we'll read through, like we said, elimination is the only way to go. So if it doesn't say that he's a great photographer, it's out. It's wrong. So we're doing the qualification, disqualification process. A says, Chambi took many commissioned portraits of wealthy Peruvians, but he also produced hundreds of images, carefully documenting the people's sites and customs of indigenous communities of the Andes. So what do you guys think? Yes or no? Are we keeping it? Are we removing it?
That's weak.
Sorry?
I say that one's weak.
Weak? So we're removing
Yeah.
it?
Yes, removing it.
Okay. B says, Chambi's photographs demonstrate a high level of technical skill as seen in his strategic use of illumination to create dramatic light and shadow contrasts. Are we keeping it? Are we not keeping it?
We keeping that one.
Keeping this one? Okay. Okay, I'll leave it as it is. C says, during his lifetime, sorry, give me a second. Okay. It says, during his lifetime, Chambi was known and celebrated both within and outside his native Peru, as his work was published in places like Argentina, Spain, and Mexico. Are we keeping it? Are we not keeping it?
Not keeping.
Okay, so it says out. D says, some peoples and places Chambi photographed had long been popular subjects for Peruvian photographers. Keeping it, not keeping it.
Irrelevant. Discard.
Sorry?
Irrelevant. Discard.
Irrelevant. Okay. So is there anyone who disagrees with B? This is your chance. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so let's look at B. Let's really go into B and see how it supports the point that we have been given. B says, his photographs demonstrate a high level of technical skill as seen in his strategic use of illumination to create dramatic light and shadow contrasts. So could anyone, well, does anyone want to justify B? Like what makes you agree with B?
All right. My justification is, all right. Remember the phrase we're looking for is he's a great photographer. You can't be a great photographer without good skill. And if Johan mentions he has great technical skill, plus it also gives evidence of how he uses those skills as with the dramatic light and shadow contrast, which makes a video or picture even more clear.
Okay. So let's look at the passage. Right, like you said, he can't be a great photographer without having a high level of technical skill. I see some faults with this. But the first thing is, let's look at the passage, right? It says he's considered to be one of the most renowned figures of Latin American photography. And how did the passage justify the claim? It said in a paper, his photographs were considered of ethnographic value, okay? He was able to capture diverse elements of Peruvian society. So basically, the justification for him being this great photographer is like the value of his work more so. Like, yeah, he was representing his subjects with dignity and authenticity. So nowhere, first of all, in the passage does it say that he had amazing skill. Like, we don't even know. Maybe he was just like a 12-year-old using his cell phone. I don't know. But from the passage, what we're told is he had this amazing skill of representing like indigenous value, That's the justification that we're given in the passage. So I was leaning more towards A. So I'll make my pitch for A, and you guys will tell me if you are still for B or you agree with me that A is the answer, right? So I'm looking at how the rest of the passage goes. Sorry, I'm on the eraser. So I'm looking at how the rest of the passage goes, right? The justification for him being amazing is that he took these amazing pictures of the elements of Peruvian society. If you look at A, it says he took many commissioned portraits of wealthy Peruvians, but he also produced hundreds of images carefully documenting the people's sites and customs of indigenous communities in the Andes. So I feel like it most directly goes with the form of the passage, and it's like sort of an extension of what is being said. Like, he's amazing because he represented, like it says, ethnographic value in his work, right? It represents that ethnographic value by giving an example. Like, for example, he took pictures of wealthy Peruvians and he took images that, document these sites and customs of indigenous communities. So what do you guys think? A or B? And you can feel free to type in the chat as well if you don't want to like speak out. But do you still agree with B or are you for A?
I still agree with B.
Okay. Anyone else still for B? I would just like to know like where everyone is at so that I know like what to do next. So do you guys still agree with B or are you for A? Or maybe you're not sure. Maybe that's it.
After evaluating the passage,
Sorry?
A seems like a better choice.
A feels like a better choice?
Yes, because of what it actually says after I reviewed it in my own words.
Mm-hmm.
Like, according to my review, it says he focused on indigeneity and
Yes.
localism,
Yeah.
and A supports it.
Yeah. So that's more in the lines of what I'm thinking. So the other thing to note about this question is that we're not told what the claim is. So that's another, I don't know, that's another box that we need to check. And remember when you talked about the main idea, we said the main idea should be talked about throughout the passage. So if we were to only focus on the first part of the passage and just say, this is our focus, that he was an amazing photographer, that's not taking the whole passage into account. Right? This whole passage is the student's claim. And we summarized it in a phrase to help us disqualify the answers. But that summary covers the whole passage, right? We said, what is that acronym we use? CIGP. We said, Chambi is great photographer, right? So yes, that's the main point. But the light that is shed on that, based on the rest of the passage, as Audin said, is that, his work was valuable because he took pictures of indigenous people. So that becomes part of the claim. Like, that's what this word great would mean because of the light that has been shed on it, yeah, by the rest of the passage. So I guess the main difference between A and B is that A is more in line with what else is said in the passage. B is not. B would make sense outside the passage. If we're just thinking of it from a point of, oh, like, what do I need to show that someone can be an amazing photographer? And it sort of really goes beyond what we have. I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest red light was the technical skill, because we don't even know whether Chambi has technical skill. Like, we don't even know. And that wouldn't give value to his work in the way that we're told in the passage. So the major thing is just like flowing with the passage, understanding the passage, understanding the claim in the passage, and being able to like figure out which answer talks about it. And as we have seen, there's only one answer that talks about, that is in line with the passage. It's the only one that talks about the authenticity, like, the representation of people, the ethnographic value, and just like the amazing work that he did with that. Yeah. So I don't know. Anyone still for B?
No, ma'am.
Right, good. I mean, even if you're still for B, I hope that gives you something to think about, like in terms of how to get the claim. This is a very unique question. Most of the times they would just state a claim and then ask you to find it. But the biggest thing is you are asked for the claim. So you really have to first of all understand what the claim is from the whole passage, the main claim, and then go through that process of finding which one talks about the claim. But yeah, this was a very interesting question. So let's see which other question we have for supporting evidence. This is also supporting evidence, but it's infographics, and we'll look at that independently. So we'll skip it for now. Question 16, quite long. Okay, I don't think it can all fit in the window. Okay, there we go. So it says, in the mountains, oh wait, sorry, the question first. Let me highlight this. Question first, it says, which finding, if true, would most directly support the researcher's hypothesis? So looking for a support, and this time we're told what to focus on, the hypothesis, which is basically like the claim. Let me put it, well, anyway, let's just we'll keep it as a claim. We haven't read the passage yet, but we're being asked which one supports the hypothesis. So let's go through and see what the hypothesis is. So it says, in the mountains of Brazil, BT and BM, two plants in the Velociaceae family, established themselves on soilless, nutrient-poor patches of quartzite rock. Plant ecologists Ana Abrajo and Patricia de Brito Costa used microscopic analysis to determine that the roots of BT and BM, which go directly into the quartzite, have clusters of fine hairs near the root tip. Further analysis indicated that these hairs secrete both malic and citric acids. The researchers hypothesized that the plants depend on dissolving underlying rock with these acids, as the process does not create channels for continued growth, but also releases phosphates that provide vital nutrient phosphorus. Okay, so this is one of the longer passages that you come across, but it's very important for you to figure out what the researcher's hypothesis is, right? Before, well, I don't know how many of you have taken science, I assume everyone, but the hypothesis is what is there before any experiment is carried out. So basically, the researchers, never mind, it's plural, the researchers. So we're talking about the researchers. So we know that we're focusing on this part of the passage, but for us to know what the hypothesis is and understand it, we have to sort of rewind and understand where that's coming from. And so we know we're supporting, that's the action. The main idea of the question is the hypothesis. So what is the hypothesis, right? So we're looking at these plants, okay, that grow, the nutrient poor patches. And then this is like the experiment, the microscopic analysis. So we're looking at these roots that grow directly into this rock, and they have clusters of fine hairs near the tip. And these fine hairs secrete acids. And so the hypothesis is the explanation for these hairs near the root tip which secrete these acids. And it says that the plants depend on dissolving the rock with these acids. As this part is not very important, this is an explanation. But basically the hypothesis is that the plants dissolve the rock for them to get what they need. Okay, and then what continues is basically how it's done. The process creates channels for growth and also releases phosphates that provide nutrients. But basically, the plants need to dissolve the rocks to get what they need. So that's what we're looking for. Something that says plants dissolve rocks to get what they need. That's more on the long side, but that's the hypothesis. Okay, so again, we'll do the same process. Go through A, B, C, and D, disqualify or qualify. A says other species in the Veloziaceae family are found in terrains with more soil, but have root structures similar to those of B, T, and BM. Are we keeping it? Are we not keeping it?
It's irrelevant because it's saying other plant units as well, but we're only focusing on BT and the other one in BT, so it doesn't really.
Great, thank you. So this would refute, this would do the opposite thing, right? Because this is saying that the plants have these roots only because they need to dissolve the rocks. So if this one says that plants are in a different environment but still have the root structures, then that refutes the claim. So A is wrong. Thank you for that. So B, through BT and BM, both secrete, sorry, not through, though BT and BM both secrete citric and malic acids, each species produces the acids in different proportions. Are we keeping? Are we not keeping?
No, we're not keeping it because it's implying that each of them require a different source, or I say a different amount of this, which wasn't supplied in the passage.
Oh, thank you. So that's not even the hypothesis, right? It's not, we're not even talking about the amounts and, so that one is off. Let's look at C. It says the roots of BT and BM carve new entry points into rocks, even when cracks in the surface are readily available. Are we keeping? Are we not keeping?
That one looks good, real good.
Good. I agree. Okay, let's keep it. Let's look at D as well. It says BT and BM thrive even when transferred to surfaces of rocks that do not contain phosphates. What do you think?
I'm a little neutral. That was really confusing me.
A little bit what?
Wow, repeat that part because I can't see it on my screen.
Oh, let me
All
raise
right.
it. Do you want me to raise it a bit?
No, it was on my fault. Sorry.
Oh, I see. Okay. So this one, remember we're looking for evidence that shows.
wrong.
Sorry,
It's wrong.
Yes, I agree. So
I'll
it
tell you
says,
what. It says it doesn't. It's implying that it doesn't require phosphates. What it clearly states on the last line that it's because phosphates are there why the process is useful.
Yeah, exactly. So this would refute the claim and not support. Thank you. So this sort of shows us a sample of what it would look like to refute a claim. Oh, sorry, not B. That was A that refuted the claim. So yeah, so imagine we were told to refute the claim. We'd be looking for evidence that proves that that's not the reason they have the root hairs, right? If other plants that are in a different environment still have the root hairs, then that's not the reason, so that's out. And then for D, if the reason they have those root hairs is for phosphates, why would they still have those roots even when there are rocks that have no phosphates? So that also refutes the claim. And we said B was just off topic. Yeah, it wasn't in line with anything. Okay, so we're left with C. Okay, so let's analyze how does C support the claim, right? So it says the roots of BT and BM carve new entry points into rocks even when cracks are readily available. So this would make sense because it proves the point that they are the ones dissolving, right? Remember, part of the hypothesis is that they secrete these acids so that they can find what's on the inside, right? So they hypothesize that plants depend on dissolving. That's a huge part of the hypothesis. So if they're able to make entry points, it means they're the ones dissolving, into the rocks. And they're able to do that as opposed to there already being cracks in the surface. Yeah. So does everyone agree with C? Or anyone who doesn't agree with C?
In agreement.
All right, great. Okay, I'm enjoying the participation. Okay, let me clear the screen. So for the next one, I won't go through the process of like reading through. I'll just sort of leave it to you guys and see what you come up with. For some reason, it's not giving me the option to clear my screen. Okay. So again, in 10 minutes, we'll be clocked out. Sorry for the disturbance. I really don't like it when we have to do it this way, but we didn't have any option today. So yeah. Okay. Supporting evidence. And also keep in mind, whenever I ask like which one most logically completes the text, this is more writing than reading. So the wording of the question will really help you to figure out what kind of question it is. And so far from going through this paper, it seems like most of it is writing. So yeah, you really need to be okay with writing. So let's see the second section. And the second section is exactly the same format as the first reading and writing. So you don't really have to know like what's in the first, what's in the second. It's basically the same. Okay, main idea, question. Okay, 12. It's too long to fit in the window. Okay, we'll come back to it. Let me find a different one. 14. Can you fit in the window? No, these questions are too long. Let's see. Let me zoom out somehow and make it fit. Are you guys able to read or is it too small? Oh, I think you
Which question
should.
is that?
Sorry?
Which question is that?
I wasn't able to hear what you said.
Which question are we working?
Oh, we're looking at the one on the right side. This one, psychologists. And I think you should be able to zoom in on your individual devices. You should be able, yeah, to like if you're not able to see it clearly,
I did,
like
but I couldn't. I did, but I still can't see all.
Oh, I see. Well, if you zoom out, it should look exactly like my screen. So you should be able to see everything. Like if you completely zoom out.
All right, no problem. I'll get started.
Okay. Yeah, it's complicated. It's kind of complicated because this is such a long question. But I want you guys to sort of work through it and then see what you come up with. So a finding, which finding from the researchers' study, if true, would most strongly support their claim? And this is, I'll read through the passage and we're looking for something that supports. So yeah, that's straightforward. It says psychologists Dacha, Keltner, and Jonathan Haidt have argued that experiencing awe, a sensation of reverence and wonder, typically brought on by perceiving something grand or powerful, can enable us to feel more connected to others and thereby inspire us to act more altruistically. Keltner, along with Dr. Paul Piff, Pierre Detz, and colleagues, claims to have found evidence for this effect in a recent study where participants were asked to either gaze up at exceptionally tall trees in a nearby grove, reported to be a universally awe-inspiring experience, or stare at the exterior of a nearby nondescript building. After 1 minute, an experimenter deliberately spilled a box of pens nearby. So we're looking for something that supports the claim. So I want you guys to read through the options and then let me know either like in the chat or by saying out loud, what do you think the answer would be?
Sorry, I kind of fell out of the meeting I fell out of the meeting just now. Which question are we doing again?
So doing the question on the right. This is
Okay.
yes, this is a passage I'm just from reading, and we're looking for which information supports the claim. So I want you guys to read through A, B, C, and D, and then see what you think.
I think that stress is B.
Okay, we have B. Thank you.
I
What
said the
is
answer is B.
Sorry, D?
B.
B. Okay. Yes. So we have another B. Does everyone else agree with B? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. So let's see. Let's analyze B. So we went through the passage, and it was talking about awe and the effects that it has on the people who have it. And so we're looking at something that supports the claim, and everything in the passage was talking about how well, basically what's introduced. Wait, let me right. Basically, what's introduced on this part, that experiencing awe can enable us to feel more connected to others and inspire us. And then as we continue to read the passage, talks about a study of the effect of awe, and participants were asked to gaze up trees nearby. Okay. Nondescript building. Okay. So which finding from the study, if true, would most strongly support the claim? Okay, so we're looking at B, we're analyzing B. Okay, so we were analyzing B, and we've read through the passage and reminded ourselves of what the claim is. So option B says, participants who helped the experimenter pick the pens used a greater number of positive words to describe the trees and the building in a post-experiment survey than did participants who did not help the experimenter. Okay, so we have to keep in mind what the hypothesis is, right? Because we're looking for, that's the claim. The claim is the hypothesis, and the experiment is meant to prove the claim. So I'm trying to find the study that shows that this all, this all can enable people to feel more connected. So basically, this study made people see different things, right? Where was that part? Found evidence. Participants were asked to either gaze up at tall trees, which is an awe-inspiring experience. So basically make some of the participants experience this awe, and see if they'll be inspired. And then the second, people were told to stare at an exterior of a building. So these were not supposed to feel inspired. So the difference between the two groups is what they were seeing, right? What made the difference wasn't the picking up of the pens, but what they were seeing. So this option B is sort of looking at the picking up of the pens. Like it says, participants who helped the experimenter pick the pens used a greater number of positive words to describe the trees and the building. So this shows like a contradiction in a way. And yeah, than participants who did not help. So we don't even know what made them help, what made them not help. It kind of feels off a little bit, but we'll come back to it. Let's see A. A says participants who had been looking at the trees helped the experimenter pick up significantly more pens than did the participants who had been looking at the building. So I feel like this one is sort of in line. So let's skip it. Let's see option C. C says participants who did not help the experimenter pick up the pens were significantly more likely to report having experienced a feeling of awe, regardless of whether they looked at the building or the trees. This one is off because it doesn't talk about the awe at all. It just talks about picking up of pens. D says participants who had been looking at the building were significantly more likely to notice that the experimenter had dropped the pens than the participants who were looking at the trees. So this one is talking about noticing. It doesn't really talk about how awe can inspire you and make you feel more connected. So I feel like A is on the mark. It's talking about how people were, like the people who were looking at the trees were more inspired, or they felt more connected and were able to like help the experimenter more. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Are you still for B? Are you for A? Are you not sure?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I think the key here, okay, let's see. Let's go back to the basics. So let me just clear the screen. And the biggest thing here is knowing what the claim is. Okay, yeah. The biggest thing here is knowing what the claim is. And the claim is this. This is the claim. Oh, sorry. And I think one of the things is also the definition of altruistically, because I feel like that's a huge part of the claim. So let me just look up the formal definition. So altruistic is showing a disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others. So basically, being able to help more, like being more concerned about other people. So the first thing is we need to understand what this claim is, right? And the claim is that experiencing awe, so seeing something that's amazing, so this is a sensation, this is the definition of awe, a sensation of reverence and wonder typically brought on by perceiving something grand or powerful. So experiencing that awe can enable us to feel more connected to others and thereby inspire us to act more altruistically. So basically the basis of this study is if you see something that's amazing and makes you feel a sensation of wonder, then you're more likely to help someone else because you feel more connected to them. This is the basis of the study. This is the hypothesis that is being proven, and therefore the claim of the passage. Okay, so if we look at this study, it says, where participants were asked to either gaze up, so they were either asked to see something that does inspire awe and make them be filled with wonder, or stare at a building. So that obviously does not have wonder in it. It was a nondescript building. It wasn't awe-inspiring. And then after 1 minute, he deliberately spilled a box of pens nearby. So basically, as the hypothesis says, a group of people were asked to see something amazing. Then another group was asked to see something that was not amazing, and pens were dropped. So the basis is if people help him pick up more pens, then they do feel altruistic. They do care about the pens enough to pick them up, right? That would prove the claim. And if we look at option A, it says participants who had been looking at the trees, meaning those who had experienced that awe, they helped the experimenter pick up significantly more pens because they cared about him. You know, they felt more connected to him because of seeing the trees. So they did feel more altruistic than those who were looking at the building. And so they helped him pick up more pens than those who were looking at the building. So I don't know, does that clear anything up? Is anyone still not for A or kind of lost?
No problems. I understand now. Thanks.
No, great. So I hope you see how the main idea is sort of incorporated into this kind of question, because you can't support a claim that you don't know. And so I hope you'll be able to do it just as we did, like break it down to the basics of what is the idea and how do I find it, and use that to sort of guide you through the question. Yeah. So just to sum up what we've looked at today, we're looking at supporting a claim. We said the first thing you should do, let me write this down. First thing you should do is read the question. That will tell you what action you're doing. Are you supporting? Are you refuting a claim? Second thing you should do is come up with a summary statement. Basically, what am I looking for? So that means finding the main idea of the question and what the main idea is. Okay, so know what you're looking for and then read through the passage so that as you read through the passage, you kind of know what you're looking for. And then the fourth thing is use the elimination method. So use the elimination method to help you figure out which question is which. And as you do that, you make sure you have something in mind. I can't emphasize this enough because if you don't know what you're looking for, you end up either eliminating the correct answer or spending a lot of time trying to like qualify or disqualify because you don't really know what you're looking for. Yeah, so always remember that you will never have to justify a correct answer. There's only going to be one that accurately does the job that you're being asked to do. Yeah. So are there any questions, contributions based on what we've covered today?
No, ma'am.
All right, great. Okay, so it seems like we're ending early today. So I hope you use this time to sort of practice. I know there should be more supporting evidence questions in this paper as well. So make sure that you practice and you're able to come up with the right answers, try to see what made you get it wrong so that you're always aiming to improve and like make any corrections that need to be made. So I will post this recording the YouTube page just in case you want to go back. Yeah, just in case you want to go back and like maybe see the process that we used to come up with the answers. But yeah, I'll post it a little bit later so that everyone has access to it. And yeah, that will be it for the day. Thanks for coming. I always enjoy the participation. I'm glad you guys took part. And if you have any questions, I'll stay behind for a few minutes. Well, it doesn't have to be on what we did, maybe generally on the SAT or anything. I'll still be here.
Thanks for
Okay,
your time.
thank you, Miss.
Bye.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a good night.